Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel. Thank you so much for watching Donna's Edge Talk Show. Thank you so much. You can find us on television syndicated, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. Some new things happening right here in South Carolina. Can't wait to tell you more ways you're going to be able to watch the show. This is going to be a little local to South Carolina. You can also find us on all the social media sites, and that's facebook.com/DFiesel. We're still on Twitter. You can also find us on all the social media sites, YouTube, the whole works. But again, thanks for watching. Continue sending emails, by the way. That makes my day. Donna@donnasedge.com. Donna@donnasedge.com. You're not bothering me at all. Some of you have sent me emails saying, I don't want to bother you, but, and then you send, you're not bothering me. Continue doing that. So good to be with you again. Thank you so much for Barry and Kathi Holcomb. It's been a while since they've been on the show. We've all had life happening, haven't we? We've been moving, and you guys have been doing a lot of stuff.
January last year.
Yeah, it's been a while. So let's catch up. What's been going on with you guys?
Well, we're still here in North Mississippi, still at Calvary Baptist Church, still working toward implementing a ministry to wounded pastors. I'm getting a lot closer to graduating with my doctorate from New Orleans Seminary, which is the foundational material for this. My dissertation will be the material we'll use in ministry to pastors, and getting close to that. I've got to have everything turned in August. I'm slated to graduate in December at long last. So, and still doing some home to heart ministry stuff. The Remember the Way ministry will be the name of my workbook that I'm producing for pastors, and that should be written. We should have that written in June. It's not going to be ready for release or anything like that for a while, but that's going to be completed. So we're stepping closer to some things that we've had a vision for a long time.
And those things are so important. We need help. But because not everything is cookie cutter either. So
no.
Think about all the things you're doing for pastors and their wives.
It's not cookie cutter. And unfortunately, there are lots of resources out there and lots of books by titles like The Wounded Pastor, The Wounded Minister, When Ministers Weep. I mean, you just go down the list and a bibliography of books that I'm looking at for pastors who've been hurt. But the Remember the Way workbook is going to be unique. There is not one single resource out there written that bases the steps of recovery out of Deuteronomy 8, 2, and 3. And so, I'm going to verbally copyright that here and there. But we've just had a lot of life going on. We're still in North Mississippi. Me as a patient and Kathi as a caregiver over the last year, and a lot of learning just in the school of suffering. That seems to be where God puts us. What he allows us to go through so many times.
Yeah, Kathi, being a caregiver, you need to write a book about that. No, I'm serious. There's a lot of folks who are caregivers, like for the parents or for a spouse, that has to go to the hospital. How do you endure it?
Right. Well, a part of that is just the commitment we made upon marriage in sickness and in health. And so, when sickness comes, that you have to just remember that. I say that, but also know that it is not easy. It has an impact on your emotions and even your mental state, as much as, you'd hate to say that, but even taking care of parents, just sick people in general, those who have physical problems can be a big wear and tear. But I have found that, going along with what we are going to do or preparing to do in ministry to ministers, that God uses even that caregiving, suffering, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, to sanctify us, to reveal things about us that we may not recognize outside of that trial. And so despite the difficulty, I think we both would say we're very grateful for what God is showing us about ourselves and what he wants to change. So I've been blessed. I say all that again to say it was not easy. So I want to make sure people hear that. We know it is not easy as a caregiver.
And she's not in caregiver mode now. I mean, so there was light at the end of the tunnel, even from the beginning, because my issues were orthopedic, and it was just crippling for months what I had to go through to get on the other side of it. So But I had a hip replacement that went bad with a little tiny bacteria that got in my hip, probably in the operating room in October of 2020 when I had a hip replacement. And I went through years of chronic pain, not being able to figure out what was wrong. And finally, we found a doctor over in Franklin, Tennessee, who diagnosed me with a prosthetic joint infection. So the sad thing about a prosthetic joint infection is they have to take everything out of your hip, all the prosthesis, all the fake parts, and they start over. But it's a lot worse of a surgery when they have to take it out, because they had to get the implants out. So they had to split my femur from the top down to get that out. So I have a plate and 4 bands around it. The first surgery, I was in the hospital, I think a full week, and then came home and got the flu. It was January of last year. Got the flu at the end of the month, laid in my recliner for 3 days, not moving, with 102, 103 fever, and wound up with blood clots in both lungs. So it was another 5 days in the hospital. I got over that, and then we were looking toward March, actually probably April, for the re-implant surgery to take the spacer. So they make you a spacer to go in the places to treat the infection. And so I got up one day when Kathi was gone, March 14th of last year, and I shouldn't have gotten up, and I kind of made a turnaround toward my recliner to get my cell phone because I was just going to walk to the back of the house, and I was on a walker. I lost my balance. I planted on that leg I wasn't supposed to put much weight on and twisted, and I broke my femur pretty badly in what they call a spiral fracture. So that was the 14th. I couldn't get the surgeon to do surgery until the 18th, but we got down to Jackson, Mississippi, the 17th of March last year. A lot of pain. I mean, just every bump in the road was excruciating. And we got into the emergency room, and they put me in an overflow area they called the dungeon. And I still have some nightmares from that. A doctor came in about 3 a.m. prior to my surgery, just a few hours later, and said, "We found a fracture in your pelvis from where you fell. We've got to put you in traction." So they came in with a drill just above my knee and drilled through my leg and through my femur and out the other side with me screaming for mercy. And put me in traction. And then we went to the operating room. So I had 2 3-hour-plus surgeries and just months. I mean, I was in a wheelchair. I was on a walker. We had a ramp at our front door, and I think being a social worker for years, that gave Kathi just chills to look at it, because that's kind of the population she dealt with, the elderly population. So, we spent months in I'd say God's recovery room, of learning the lessons. Once again, just learning what He has for us to learn, not letting it be wasted, but learning. So that's what put her in the caregiver position. And I'm much better. I'm walking most of the time without my cane now. I don't think I'll ever walk normally, but she had to do everything. I mean, literally everything, to help me get to the bathroom, to help me shower. Everything I ate for weeks and weeks and weeks, she brought to me on a tray. So it took us until June of last year where she felt comfortable leaving me at home, and she went to Nashville and spent a few days with our children. And so, yeah, it was just a tough year.
Oh my goodness. Just some of the things that we just take for granted, that you had to start doing all over again.
Right.
Yeah, I literally had to teach myself certain things about walking again. I was standing at the bathroom sink one morning, and we'd gone through my daily routine. I was on my feet, but with a walker. And I thought to myself, if I wanted to turn around and walk out of this bathroom without the walker, what would I do? And I couldn't even put it in my mind. I could not make my mind register what would I do to turn around and take steps. So in essence, kind of had to learn to walk all over again. A lot of physical therapy. I probably need some more. But nonetheless, we each learned, a lot of long hours isolated in the chair at night and day. I got pretty good at some Xbox games. I read a lot of books.
He's now the team champion, right?
No, I wouldn't say that, but my son had given me an Xbox. I read the entire Left Behind series.
Oh, wow.
And, I read some good books. Joni Eareckson taught a book. I don't know if you've heard of it. Kathy's read it. It's called A Place of Healing, about her own paralysis and the pain that she deals with. Another book, a good book by Philip Yancey, a little more difficult to read, but called Where is God When It Hurts? So a lot of time just for us both, I think, to reflect, to read, to wrestle with circumstances, and to say, all right, God, what is it? What do you want to teach us?
Because that made the first question out of my mouth. God, what's in this lesson? Absolutely. So let me ask you a question, because I've been sick before, and so had terrible asthma and just had hepatitis one time, thought I was dying there. There was a time that I would get depressed, and I don't get depressed. I mean, I've just never been one of those kinds of people that would just be, I don't know why I would. Did you go through times of depression?
What about on your side, Kathi?
Well, I mean, I think, when you think about depression, sometimes you want to put that in the category of some clinical depression, which is a depression that's recognized and you're medicated for it or treated for it, which, I mean, that can happen for sure. I do believe that people can be depressed without something being, diagnosed. I know that in the Psalms, a lot of the psalmists spoke about thoughts and their feelings of depression, discouragement. And yeah, for sure, I think both of us went through some of that, because that season of life, we just totally, everything stopped.
Everything.
Ministry, very, very, I didn't miss tons of preaching, but the ability to do what we felt called here to do, isolation was a big part of that, although our church family was beautiful. So don't hear me say that they didn't tend to us or whatever. But just that feeling, which I know is a common thing among people who are, dealing with sickness themselves or taking care of others who are sick, that sense of isolation. And, it just really brought us to a point of asking the Lord, what really is all of this about? And I think, one of the things I told Barry, one of the reasons maybe why we haven't started this Remember the Way ministry in full force yet is because there were still some things that God wanted us to go through and to learn, because we've talked about this before, Donna. I believe we've said, you comfort others with the comfort with which God has comforted you. And so in this sense, we have experienced that. And so maybe we're better able to comfort others who might go through what I've been calling their flavor of trial, is what I've been saying. So it might not be a hip replacement with infection and a fall and all that he went through. It may be, other things that are their flavor of trial, but I think the end result is the same. So you might go through depression, you might go through, an increase in anxiety, you may go through isolation, you may go through, just this crisis of faith. But God is always at work to reveal those things about ourselves that he wants to sanctify. And sometimes that's really hard, especially for ministers, to admit that maybe I need a little bit more sanctification in this area of my life. And so only God knows what it's going to take. And that's why I say it's our flavor of trial, because he's the only one that knows what it's going to take to chip away at whatever needs to be chipped away. So long story answer, I guess, long answer to your question is for sure. Depression was probably a big part of that. And I know Barry struggled with some of that.
Yeah, for me, Donna, so for me, part of the mental part was post-traumatic stress injury, because when I fell, I was just in shock. And the sound that my walker made banging around on the floor over next to me out of reach. And when I broke my femur, I had to go over, kind of grab my walker and put it out in front of me. And I had to get up as best I could on my knees, on one knee, and crawl back to my chair, because I wasn't going to let Kathi come home and find me in the chair and floor. But, I hit my head pretty hard when I fell. So I got up in the chair and came home, and she put up groceries, and I said, well, I have to talk to you about something. And I'm good. She said, you fell, didn't you? And I said, yes, yes, I fell. But the memory of that, and then just until you've been through being put in traction with a drill through your femur, I can't describe the agony and just if you let your mind go back there very often, if you let your mind go back to when you fell, the things that were traumatic, if you'll let yourself think about those things, you're ruined. I mean, so I can get myself in a fog for the rest of the day and be in tears if I just go back and think about that. So, yeah, I think part of it was depression. What I have has been identified not as a post-traumatic stress disorder, but as a post-traumatic stress injury. And that makes a lot of sense because I'm not dealing with some of the ramifications of that now. I mean, I had a lot of time. I dealt with a lot of bad dreams, paralyzing dreams. Mm-hmm. So the impact was great, emotionally, mentally, and I would just urge everyone, we turn to the scripture, we turn to so many sources, great books, but I found that just talking it out with someone that I don't know in a family ministry, I've turned to Hope Family Ministry over in Tupelo with a certified biblical counselor, just to talk through some issues. And it's hard to believe the help that is. Mm-hmm. As a pastor, I never dreamed about getting counseling. It's about August of last year, I said, Kathy, I think I need someone to counsel me through some of this. And she said, yeah, go for it. And so the guy that I've been seeing, a guy named Matt Welburn, been tremendous. And I would just recommend to everyone struggling, because after massive life events, yes, depression can come along, anxiety can come along, post-traumatic stress injuries can come along. And the best medicine I found was not a pill, but was to just talk through it with someone who was trained to help me, work through the intricacies of how my mind was treating me.
What I'm hearing from both of you, because Kathy, you were protecting him, and then you were protecting Kathy, Barry, when you got up out of the floor, because you didn't want her to see you like that. What gives you the drive? Because it had to be pain. I mean, I would not imagine the pain being in the floor like that, where you fell down, you're getting your walker, and you're getting back in the chair, all so that Kathy can't see you laying on the floor.
Right. I was sitting there with my blanket on my lap, just like she had left me. No, I didn't want her to see me in the floor. I didn't want her to come into the shock of me in the floor. I mean, I think it was shocking enough to tell you something bad has happened and you need to know it. And she knew right then. But yeah, it was horrible. I didn't know if I could get up. It was an act of sheer will and praying, Lord, help me get out of this floor. And I found on it, even in the little things, you pray through them. I prayed through that, shaken, and I was in shock. I just was in a state of disbelief. And I don't know. I mean, it was just one of those God things that he got me up. And then look, if I could get up and show you effectively, I would show you how I can walk now. I've come so far. I've come a long way. And just reminding yourself, through the tough journey, through the long months of recovery, you do make progress. And marking progress sometimes is not easy, because you're in that. So you're right there in the heat of it. You're right there in your body. You're in your own mind every day, and seeing a lot of progress is not easy. But everyone would tell me, you look like you're doing so much better. You're walking better. And then all of a sudden I would say, that felt different. I walked better. I think I can walk without the cane, but I stayed on a walker. I preached out of a wheelchair for months. I mean, for not this Easter, but last Easter was my first Sunday back after the second surgery. My son literally had to lift me up into the truck and then help swing my legs around. It was just one of those, you think you're never going to get to the end of journeys, but you do. And I think we watched out for each other as best we could. I think she watched out for me more, is the honest truth.
You guys already had a strong marriage. Do you feel like your marriage is even stronger now because you had to go through this?
All right, I've been talking, so.
No, I mean, for sure. One of the things, of course, our heart is for ministers, and because we've said this before, and Donna, I think you've agreed that, ministers often don't think they need ministered to, right? So they're the ones that pour in. So it's hard for them to accept others to pour into them. And so through this particular trial, and we know that not every minister and family or anybody, Christian believer, is going to go through a physical trial that we did. We went through a series of where we were both like, what else is going to happen? I mean, we were almost, what I can't think of the word. It's on the tip of my tongue, where you're startled that maybe something else is going to happen. So you're kind of just looking around. You're gun shy, I guess.
When is the other shoe going to drop?
When is the other shoe going to drop? And so we were just weary from that. And I'm not going to say we didn't struggle in our marriage. So I'm not going to minimize that, the struggles that we had in going through this time. But one of the things that I have seen about our marriage is we are in a place in our marriage that we probably would not be had we not gone through this. Yeah. We are learning some things about ministry and about the Lord's character and about what he really calls us to that we would never have learned had we not gone through this flavor of trial for us. And like I said, it may be different for other people, but you know what the common denominator will be is suffering. Suffering. And I think that's something we don't learn that in seminary. They don't teach you that in seminary. You don't talk about that when you're with your friends across the dinner table. How have you suffered this week? We don't, that's not a question, we would ask.
It's not typical.
It's not typical. And so, but that is the tool that God would use to teach us obedience. The scripture that says that Jesus learned obedience through suffering. And we don't need to get into what all that means, but I do know that if Jesus did that, then that's something we learn too. So I think our marriage is stronger. I mean, for sure.
I've learned a greater appreciation for her. I watched her take care of me. I got to a point I hated to ask for her to do one more thing. Mm-hmm. But we did. We learned to depend on each other. For me, depending on her, and for her, just the faithfulness it took to do that. So every good marriage struggles, and I don't want to sugarcoat marriage for anyone. It's the hardest relationship you will ever be in, but it's the most fulfilling relationship that you will ever go through. And you just, some things you just have to endure through together. I think really we just kind of got through some things together. Mm-hmm. But here's a verse, Deuteronomy 8:2. God, and this is the foundation for my Remember the Way book. God says, "You shall remember all the ways I led you in the wilderness these 40 years, testing you to see what was in your heart." Mm-hmm. And I'm just convinced that the seasons of life that bring suffering are a test. Those times, even the minor things in life that we would not consider that great. I mean, not satisfied with how the car in front of me is driving or how fast they're going or how slow they're going. And, the test, I mean, everything is a test, Donna. Mm-hmm. And so I think this was probably the biggest test we've ever had in our marriage, just because it just seemed to go on and on and on and on. Finally, I remember the first day I helped her cook something at the stove. I remember the first day I was able to get up and go prepare my own plate and take it to the table. Mm-hmm. On crutches, on one crutch for a long time, but able to do some things. And I don't know, for Kathi, I felt like she was kind of set free, and maybe she felt like she was set free, but there was a lot of mental, I think for her on the struggle mentally was just worrying that, is he okay? Is he going to fall again? I mean, just like we said, is there going to be another problem? Because literally worrying about someone that's a falls risk, falling again, is a lot of worry. And so it stressed her out, I know. And when she reached the point where she felt like I was okay, then she went and spent a few days in the Nashville area with our kids. But did you worry about me when you were there?
Well, you always think what else might happen. But yeah, for sure, you get to transition through that, for sure. And that I think that's something common with trials and things that happen, events that happen to people, that anxiety that could come. You either go one way or the other. You either go full-fledged into the anxiety and the worry and you're swallowed up by that, or you can run to the scripture. And one of the things I wish I could tell you the whole story about, when he had broken his, he had fallen, broken his femur. We were at a hospital, and the little guy was rolling him to go get his X-ray or MRI, whatever it was. And I remember looking up, there was an office door. And on that door, somebody had placed scripture that said, my grace is sufficient. And I just remember feeling like that was the Spirit of God just speaking to me through the word at that moment, that he was just saying, Kathy, my grace is sufficient, and rest in that. And so those moments where, you hear from the Lord through his word that brings you the peace that you're so desperately, crying for, whatever situation or trial you're in, those are the things that kept me going. Just the fact that, what I've learned coming from this, and I mean, we both share some of these same things, but, he is worthy of my trust. He is worthy of my trust, and his grace is sufficient. And Hebrews 12 that talks about he will discipline those who are his children. And so I feel like we've been through discipline, not because we've done something wrong. And see, that's important to understand. Discipline because he's working us out to look more like him. Right. And so that's, what I feel like we've been through. And this was just what God chose to do that. And Lord knows there'll be more, in the future. But I do feel like as a result of this, we are better able to understand others' trials and then to offer, God willing, if God led, comfort. The same type of comfort that God comforted us with. Because really, and one of the greatest things I've learned, I'm sure it's the same with Barry, maybe, I don't want to speak for him, but God is not, and this may be shocking to some pastors and wives out there, but God is not so concerned about our ministry and our legacy as he is about his children being conformed to his image. And whatever it takes to make that happen, he will do. Because and I'll stand on this, something I've learned too, that church and ministry can be an idol. I think we've talked about that maybe in the past, but it just confirmation wise, your ministry, dear pastor and family, can be an idol in your life. And that's maybe another day we can talk about that. But that's something that I've really learned.
But you have to learn too. I mean, so that idolatry, God takes care of that by putting on the sidelines for a while.
Yes.
He sets you, in a position where you can't do anything for a while, and then you learn about the tests. And for me, one of the tests was just physical pain. I don't think I've ever been in so much pain in my life that just lasted day in and day out for months, and really still. I mean, I deal with a certain amount of pain every day. I have some nerve damage. I mean, they did 2 incisions right on top of each other, 8 weeks apart. The second one wound up being 18 inches. I have 110 staples, and I just dealt with pain, and that's gotten better. So, it's just part of the testing, part of what you learn.
Guys, we're going to have to go into a commercial break, and we're going to be right back. I'm going to sound like I'm with the what was that show that used the Newlywed Game? Okay, I got a question. It's going to be like the Newlywed Game when we come back. Okay. Don't worry, but we'll be right back.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer
yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender. The only place I buy my beef is Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama. Their cattle is born and raised on their ranch, grass and grain fed, and you can feel confident when you serve your family and friends because their beef is all natural and no antibiotics or hormones are added. You can buy whole beef or perhaps go in with family or friends and buy half. Their customer service is number one as they take care of the delivery to their local processor and can deliver to your home for a small added fee. They also offer herd replacement heifers. I always call Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama for my beef specialty recipes and cookouts, and you can too. Food shortages are increasing, so buy local by calling 256-523-6462. That's 256-523-6462.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are back. My name is Donna, and I am your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show where truth matters. And we're talking truth right here. Okay, with Barry and Kathi Holcomb. Guys, I'm going to pretend I'm the host on the Newlywed Game, okay?
All right.
That's not going to be bad, nothing like that, but we're talking truth here. Okay, I know that when I'm sick, I'm not a good patient. And when Phil is sick, my husband, he's not a good patient. Was he a good patient, Kathi?
Well, he says that he's not. He, how do I say that? So we're just very different. Like when as a child, if I hurt myself, I wouldn't show anybody. I wouldn't, I was always kind of, I would hide that. I don't know why. I wasn't abused. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I was just weird like that. Mm-hmm. But he is very much focuses on the issues that he has. And it can become something that dominates his thoughts and his talk and, and all of that. So
wearying.
I mean, and it just can, sometimes just it's not always bad. What is that book that's called? It's a horrible, awful, terrible, bad day. Whatever that book was, I didn't say that right. But that's kind of the way, he would be. Now, having said that, I was not experiencing the pain and all that he went through because he really did go through a lot. And I had to, remind myself of that. One of the things that I had to do was to make sure that he would do what he could do. Right. So like if he he got so used to me waiting on him or doing things. As he slowly got better, I would, try at times to get him to do what he could do. He may not have been aware of that, but, times to either get things or do things or whatever that he could do so he would have some sense of light at the end of the tunnel. You are improving, you're getting better. So he was not a bad patient in the sense of, of what some people say about that.
I think the worst part of me being a bad patient, and this is just full disclosure, and this is just raw truth. But the pain management is not always easy. So I had some anxiety from when they drilled through my leg. I was just in a lot of, anxiousness and pain. So they sent me home on 2 very tough medications. I came home on a pain medication and an anti-anxiety medication, and they affected my personality. They just weren't good for me. They were a bad combination, and it took a while for Kathi to get me to see how I was. And for me, I had a light bulb moment, and I said, oh, and I really was able to compare myself to something else. And I said, that's how I look right now. That's how I am. But for her, trying to deal with me on pain medicine and anti-anxiety medicine that combined to make me a different person was difficult for her. It was stress. I think that may have been one of the most stressful things about that. And just managing the long list of medications I had. But those 2 things, and then eventually transitioning off of pain medication. Just to think, all right, I can live with this. We can use something else. And that was not an issue. I knew I would get to that point. But as far as being a bad patient, I think that would be the worst season of my being a patient for her was trying to get the right pain management that didn't make me just act differently. And it's hard to explain how that was.
Well,
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say about that, there are probably people out there, and you don't want to say that Christians don't struggle with this or do this, but and I'm not talking about a full-fledged, addict or anything like that. So, because that is a little different story, but I'm just talking about someone that comes home on doctor's medicines that, that say, take this. And when you as their caregiver notice that things are not right, that there's something that is not quite.
Something's got to be tweaked.
Something. And so to continue to hold to that and not just to listen, because Barry was like, no, this is what the doctor ordered. This is what the doctor, and I would have to, kind of keep talking about things and doing a lot of praying because, sometimes physicians we love our doctors. I don't want to badmouth them or anything, but sometimes they're sending you home. They're not going to.
They don't know your body like you know your body.
Right. Exactly. So that was maybe, one of that probably was top dog issue as far as just, hey, this is a little bit more difficult than I don't take any medicine. All I take are supplements. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that next week I wouldn't have to be on something. I'm not, saying this is a bad thing. Barry's on a lot of medication. But I am sort of, I'm a little bit more wary of it, and that's probably a point of disagreement that we have about some things. I think try to go natural.
I'm the natural person.
Yeah.
Of our household.
I take something for blood pressure. I take. I do have a good bit of nerve damage, so I take a medication that's. Most people it knocks them out. It doesn't affect me. I take Neurontin for nerve pain, and it really, really helps. But I'm on less medication now than I've been since this started.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was just a realization. I had to realize, and here's another truth for married couples, just if you want to talk about marriage, she can't change me. She can't make me change. I can't change her. I cannot make her change. And sometimes it's a combination of God saying, Barry, wake up, and me having a light bulb moment of saying, oh, this is how she sees me. This is how this is affecting. And now that's how it's affecting her. So we had to go through some real stretching moments, but maybe I was a good patient at times, maybe not.
It wasn't.
Well, we're all different. And the way I handle things is probably very much like you would handle things, Kathi. I'm the mother hen. I can see him sick when he has the flu, and I'm just like, I want him well, and so I will see something from one angle, he sees it from another angle. And then, Barry, I heard you say this. You got to the point you didn't want to ask her to do one more thing. And Phil is the same way. And so if he's sick and I've been helping him out, he won't tell me when something is wrong. And I've got to just about beat it out of his head. And I'll just say, you got to tell me what's wrong so I can help you with it. Did you guys have those moments? You wanted to help him, but he wouldn't let you.
Yeah, I think in the situation with the medication, for sure, I wanted to help him, but he wouldn't let me. And that was, and granted, that's one of those things too. We as women, as wives, sometimes
we're the mama bear.
We're mama bear. We think, we're the Holy Spirit, we want to speak truth to them, and that is not always received. And so that was sort of, God had to work on that, and that's fine. You know what? I would much rather God work on that than it just be because of me. Because if it's just because of me, it may not be long term. But if God does it, then it's long term, to work on his heart and mind.
She was right. I just had to have time to see it and process that. And the medications that I was on they're both very powerful, and combined, they just made me, a very different man. And I finally was able to see that. I was able to compare that to another individual that I'd seen struggle with medication. And I thought, that's how she sees me. That's how I see it. It's just difficult to explain. But then we were in a process then, from the beginning, we were in a process of, you have to wean off of all that stuff. You have to get where you can take something else for pain. I need something for pain right now. So when I'm done with this, I'll take something over the counter, something that, I can take naproxen sodium and it helps. You have to just work through and get to the point where you're better and you realize I don't have to have certain things. What I can use is okay to use. So anyway.
Let me ask you guys, and the reason I'm asking is God gives me grace every day, because I'm just telling you, I should be in the middle of a dirt bag somewhere. Because I don't do the right thing sometimes. So God gives me grace. Did you guys learn anything new about grace when it comes to each other?
Absolutely. One of the things that I am still learning, and I'm 60 years old. So I'm thinking, Lord, why did it take so long to learn this? That his, like I told you, the thing that he shared with me was my grace is sufficient. And not just knowing that verse in your mind, because we as ministers, we as believers, I know what the Word of God says. I know what it says. We'll say that. But here's the thing, even the demons, even the devil knew what the Word of God said. Okay, what's different is that we walk in its truth and in its power. And so, for me, His grace being sufficient, where I was learning that it didn't matter about my failures. It doesn't matter about my righteousness under Christ. That no matter what, God's grace doesn't change. It doesn't change when we struggle in our marriage. It doesn't change when, we going through this trial. His grace is sufficient. And just the fact that God can give Barry grace to deal with the issues that Barry needs to deal with as a husband, as a pastor, as a man of God, just like he does for me. And so to view him from that lens, that God's grace is sufficient for Barry as well. And I think I've minimized grace maybe just to being saved. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Grace for salvation, but he gives us grace for living, for sanctification.
And I think what I learned as far as our relationship is she is a better grace giver than I am. She's a better grace giver than most people that I've ever known. And then, I think on the tail end of everything, I've learned that I want to give back. I want to be able to do a little bit more for her. She's in the home. She takes care of our home. But I've learned that there are little things I can do to show grace, even if it's just as simple as folding a load of clothes or 2 or 3 load of clothes, or just the things that the daily things where we give grace daily. and we receive it. So I don't know. It was a year of teachable moments, Donna. I think that's the way I would kind of sum it up. It was one teachable moment after another. The fall was a teachable moment. Being carted off to the overflow area called the dungeon was a teachable moment. Being in a room with a man. I mean, I had no privacy that night. I didn't even have a call button to call out to the nurse. I had to yell out the door when I needed a nurse. That was a teachable moment. Going into the operating room in such pain that I was just begging the anesthesiologist, don't make me help you. I can't help you move me. I can't move a muscle to the next table. Mm-hmm. It was a teachable moment of trusting God to work through others to meet my needs. Mm-hmm. And then just the surgery itself, the recovery from that. It was just a series of moments where God's saying, all right, here's the test. Now what do you do? And I think that's what for people out there listening who are struggling, just know that teachable moments and seasons, they get better. I mean, there were moments I was sitting in this very room in a recliner looking up at the ceiling. I think I named all the knots in the wood up there, just the time. And I didn't think that time, I just didn't think I'd ever get over it. I did not think I would ever feel better. But the encouragement for others is it's a season. It doesn't last forever. And either you get better from the circumstances or God changes your perspective.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important because there may be some people who'll never physically get better from things. Barry is blessed in that he does see light at the end of the tunnel. He'll have some, things that'll always be this way, but he's not going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He has gotten some better. But I think even, reading that Johnny Erickson Tata book, that she's, she is that way until she gets her glorified body. Her perspective is what gets her through. And I think that is something that we are learning even now is how do we view our trials? How do we view our suffering? Because, in the United States of America, we think if you're going through a bad time, it's either because you're sinful, which I'm not saying it couldn't be, but we just throw it all off. You're sinful, or God is not showing you favor, or God doesn't love you. That it has to be, there's got to be something wrong. Whereas in the Bible, suffering sometimes was brought about just because you were his child. You're being sanctified. You're learning how to comfort others. So many things that God would use. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a matter of our perspective. And we gain that right perspective through the Word of God. And that's how important that is.
And Donna, back on that, and we'll let you take us in a new direction in a minute if you want to. But as far as perspective goes, I always go back to Deuteronomy 8:2-3. The wilderness wandering and the instruction of God. Remember the way I led you in the wilderness these 40 years. That is a perspective changing statement. So when he said, you better remember, that changes your perspective on circumstances. For the Israelites, it had to change their perspective on their murmuring. They were in a position whether they either had to trust him or murmur against him. And what did they do so often? They failed the test by murmuring. Mm-hmm. So that's the same for me. I have to now look back, and I guess I should say I get to look back. I get to reminisce, and I get to see where God's faithfulness was. Mm-hmm. What seems like an insurmountable challenge in a period of time. Now I'm looking back at it, saying, "All right, so I can see where He was faithful here." Getting me off of the wrong pain medicines. That was him. That was his faithfulness. So Deuteronomy 8:2 is about Israelites, you guys, as you're going into the promised land, you better have a new perspective that says God did a lot of things that you might not really remember moment by moment.
Absolutely. Was there, Kathi, and I want to ask you, Barry, the same question. Okay, was there a time, I know you guys already had a strong marriage. That was obvious that the many times I've interviewed you guys. And believe me, I know when someone doesn't. Okay, it's the way I was brought up. So, Kathi, was there a defining moment? Was there something that happened during this whole thing that you just looked at him and you thought, That's why I married him. Was there that moment?
Every day.
I am, so full disclosure here, even though he brags about me being a great caregiver, I'm not a great caregiver in the sense that I am, I'm like, he may tell it how bad he feels or whatever. And I'm like, okay, let's get over it. Let's get up. I'm kind of like, just move on, kind of thing. So, I don't, in the midst of it, I probably was more, dealing with my own struggles and dealing with my mental, emotional, and even spiritual struggles through this whole thing. Mm-hmm. I think, to answer that, not a defining moment during that time, because I was so caught up in the struggle of that and just, trying to get through it. I think it's kind of come even as we've come out, toward the light, where, going back to the verse that Barry was sharing, that one of the reasons why God did that was to humble them and to test them. And so, I know that I married Barry to go on this journey, this spiritual journey of ministry, of, journey of what God called us to together. But to be humbled and to be tested, and the rest of that verse says to know what was in your heart, not that God needed to know, but that they needed to know what was in their heart, whether they would keep his commandments or not. And then he says he humbled you, let you be hungry, fed you with manna, which you didn't know, that he might make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And I think that is the path that God has taken us, that the reason that Barry and I are together is for this purpose, that we have been humbled in ministry. We have been humbled in life circumstances. And in that humbling and in that trial, in that test, God has revealed our heart condition to each other, or just to ourselves, where you were able to say, or we've been able to talk about, what, this is who I am. This is what God wants to change. And both of us have been willing and able to identify those things. And then to understand that, okay, so he's testing you, he's feeding you manna, all these things that he's doing in order for you to know that you cannot live by bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And so what we're learning together in this marriage is that we are to live by everything that comes out of the mouth of God. So in this trial, what kind of perspective are we going to have? In this trial, are we going to bellyache and complain and focus on the negative and be, discouraged? Not to say, we've done that. We have definitely done that. But what God is teaching us is, okay, I've got to choose the way that God has revealed to me, which is that I've got to live in accordance with his word, which says, my grace is sufficient. And I could name a whole bunch of other verses that he has told us about. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, for me, the moment, it was not just one moment, Donna. It was every day. This is why I married this woman. Mm-hmm. I could not do anything for myself. I could get down the hall to our little bitty, we've got a large bathroom that has a toilet and one small closed door. And I'd have to get in there. We had to wiggle the walker in there. And I had to be on a raised toilet seat. And so first thing every morning after I would eat and drink some coffee, I'd, all right, Kathy, I got to go to the bathroom. And she would get me back there. And so I couldn't even get in the shower. I had staples. She helped me bathe. She helped me do everything. She helped me get dressed. I wouldn't be ready for a single day during that period without her. And I think that's the long-term perspective that we have to have, because there are days when we don't feel warm and gushy, but to realize I could not make it. And I think that was one of the big teachable moments for me for our marriage, is I could not have made it without her.
Wow, I'm almost crying. That's awesome. That you learned that. And that's a huge, huge lesson, because I'm just telling you, in marriage, we all have our roles. And, I do what I do as a wife, Phil does what he does as a husband. But sometimes we don't see things from their perspective. We don't see, because, and I'm one of those. I'm one of those that a house has to fall on me for me to see things. I think it's why God puts me through some of these challenges a lot of times, so that I can actually see, what Phil does for me.
Yes.
And I appreciate it, but sometimes it probably looks like I don't.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think we both do that.
Well, and for those times, for me, I don't feel like I was able to adequately express my gratitude because she was having to do so much. And eventually, thanks for bringing my breakfast, or thanks for helping me get paid. It just became, it would be easy for me to think that she's thinking I take her for granted. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if she realizes, boy, I was not taking her for granted, because I had to have her. I couldn't even get in the vehicle without her lifting both my legs and spinning them around and turning them around for me. So it was just a long process, but every step of the way was a learning moment, a teachable moment.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I've have friends who have divorced over sickness, because either he couldn't take it anymore, she couldn't take it anymore. Had you guys not been a saved couple, how do you think this would have ended?
We may have gotten through it, but I don't think we would be who we are on the other side of it. And I think that's the important thing. Yes. For us, when we made our vows, and Kathi referred to that a while ago, the part about in sickness and in health is in there for a reason, in good times and bad, in prosperity and poorness, and however it's worded. I think we may have made it through, but we wouldn't have had all the perspectives we've talked about over the last hour. And it may have been easy to resent. It would have been easy maybe for her to resent me. And I think maybe there could be, she may have had to wrestle with some of that. And there may have been some guilt on my part that I couldn't do anything. I had to depend on my wife to do everything. And I could have been angry that I had to depend on someone like her. So yes, salvation, but not just salvation, sanctification over the years. I've been saved for, 41 years. And it's been a process. That has been a process of sanctifying. And this entire last year and a half has just been a sanctifying process for both of us that we're still learning from. And I just think that's the wonderful thing about our faith. So you go back to that question of, had you not been saved, well, it would have been a lot different. We may have made it, and our marriage may have hung on, but it wouldn't have been something that strengthened us and made us see one another in that different light.
And that can strengthen other people as well. 1 minute. What would you guys like to say before we go?
You get the last word.
Well, I think, for me, it's just a matter of I want people to learn, and that's that Holy Spirit mentality. I can't make people learn this, but, I just want people to learn that God wants us to have a perspective about His grace and His sufficiency, and that we can trust Him. He is worthy of our trust.
See it His way. Look at it through God's perspective, and let that be.
I see a book on the horizon. You writing it now?
It is called Remember the Way. It is specifically a workbook for wounded ministers. But this process, Deuteronomy 8:2-3, gives anyone steps for healing from different things that life throws at them.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for being on the show. Hang around. We're going to get you set up for next month, okay? And we'll be with you guys a little bit later. Thank you so much, guys, for watching the show. Definitely. And we'll be seeing you next time around.